It's true. We have played these games before. Squid Game was an international phenomenon back in 2022.
You just blowing from Stupid Town?
And has grabbed the eyes of millions, curious to see who will live and who will die in twisted variations of children's games. Season 1 was a great season of television, like really freaking good. Ji-hun is very atypical for a protagonist, but his determination was captivating. Yes, he was extremely lucky, but the drama was just so dramatic. And when Se-byok was murdered by Sang-woo, the emotional gut punch tore my soul in half. That was powerful, so while the story was contrived as hell, the themes and characters were strong enough to cloud over nitpicks. But now we have another season, and it's worse. Squid Game 2 is just the first half of Squid Game Season 1, but with one excellent episode. I might need to make a video on Bread and Lottery because that episode was, I guess you could say, peak. I'm sorry, but most of Squid Game 2 is great character moments that only exist in isolation. Each character is engaging and you are rooting for them, but only a couple actually impact the only character that matters in this season, Ji-hun. In Season 1, we had 3 captivating characters and their journeys to follow, but now we only have one. Every other character is just emotional filler. I love them, sure, at a superficial level, not really at an emotional level though. Squid Game 2 fails to prove why it exists beyond having interesting ideas that don't further the story. The ending was unique and worked for me, but it runs the risk of killing the quality of Season 3 from the jump. Like, if Squid Game 3 can't logically follow up on this interesting plot beat, then what is the point of having it? You need to do more with a follow-up season. Sure, it would be a bummer if Season 3 did less. Squid Game 3 opens with player 246 not dying. Guard 11 shoots the guy in the gut instead of killing him. Why not just shoot him in the leg? That's how the corrupt guards shot players in red light, green light. Why take the risk by shooting him in the gut? Wouldn't that cause him to bleed out, you know? Shooting him in the leg would be far safer. Anyway, Ji-hun is returned to the games, and they play more games, and it's essentially Season 1 again. Wow, that's just amazing! I'm serious, besides character moments that legitimately had me screaming in tears, the plot sucks. Without spoiling anything, the most interesting character is Guard 11, and unfortunately she doesn't get as much screen time as you would hope. Most of the screen time is given to 3 new games for our characters to die in. Ji-hun's arc is the same, just cranked all the way up to 11 because of a certain character. Every death serves a similar purpose as previous characters in the series, and the show just drags through repetitive conversations. I never would have expected melodrama in Squid Game of all shows. Emotional moments carried so much weight in Season 1 because you understood every character and how they connected to other characters. When a character dies in Season 3, it's not because it impacts a central character, but because it will make the audience sad. When Ollie died, that impacted Sang-woo. When Se-byok died, that impacted Ji-hun. Every death served a purpose. When a certain character dies in the hide-and-seek game, it's not to support Ji-hun's arc, but a different character's arc. But unfortunately, the character that benefits thematically from this death doesn't impact our main character, unlike Sang-woo or Se-byok. It's just kinda lazy. When a certain character dies in the jump rope game, it only impacts Ji-hun because of an extremely contrived plot device that sucks balls. I found myself crying in moments that had a surface level depth to them. I was essentially emotionally manipulated into caring about characters that don't serve a more impactful purpose. It's a real downer. I don't wish to spoil any of the bad characters because, well, I want you to experience that for yourself. But I will talk about my favorite characters, arguably the only 2 well-written characters in this season, Guard 11 and the Frontman. As established in Season 2, Guard 11 escaped to North Korea assuming her husband and daughter were dead, and worked at some amusement park alongside player 246. Being a guard in Squid Game was just a means of making cash, but when she notices the father of a child she knew playing in the games, she is determined to protect him, giving her a new purpose in life. If she couldn't protect her daughter, at least she could help this person protect his daughter. Season 3 follows this up as expected. She saves player 246 and that's it. The reason this character works is that the show didn't spend enough time with her to, you know, ruin her. Yay! Also, Guard 11 is simply a neat addition to this show's universe. It's interesting to view the games from a guard's perspective. It's kind of like if Finn from Star Wars was written well. She's morally comparable to other antagonistic basic characters in the show, but her journey to protect this one player, no matter what, was captivating to watch. Also, the frontman goes through a similar transformation. Many folks were pretty mad that the detective didn't confront the frontman, but I think both of their stories were handled well in season 3. I'm glad the show didn't halt the pacing for a massive expedition dump as to why the frontman does what he does. We as an audience kind of already know why because of his past with the games, so wasting time explaining that to the detective feels redundant. I also feel that the detective internally knows why his brother is doing this. The frontman doesn't have a good reason, he's just a bad person, and the detective knows this. That's why the one interaction they have is so powerful. The frontman doesn't have an excuse. He would rather his brother hate him than for his brother to be disappointed in his life. I love that by the final episode, the frontman does the right thing by protecting a certain character. I also loved that he visits another certain character, tying a bow on a plot thread established back in season 1. You can clearly see the complexity of the frontman. I cannot say the same about any other character though. The season doesn't go in the direction I thought they were heading after season 2. I didn't know they would rehash season 1, but whatever. Ji-hun has the same arc as season 1, essentially. Player 333, however, interesting in concept and execution, fails to live up to how I, and I'm assuming many audiences, thought his character would turn out based on setups in season 2. And he's just a worse iteration of Songwoo's character type. Player 222 is wasted and unfortunately turned into a plot device, which is just brilliant. Player 388's personality is altered to fit the narrative, which is kind of a bummer. He was extremely likable in season 2, and to see what they did to him is just sad. Player 120, 007, and 149 remain safe in the script, but their conclusions are underwhelming for sure. Players 124 and 125 get conclusions that work, but again, with season 2 in mind, they feel altered for the sake of the narrative, especially 125. Good lord, what a change. It works, but just why would you go in that direction with the character? That direction was kind of already used with player 124, so repeating it again feels redundant. Squid Game 3 has lost what made the show exceptionally compelling, the characters. Again, they work in isolation, but within the context of the show, they feel wasted. Guard 11 and the frontman are characters that give the audience new perspectives on the games, but these other characters feel like retreads of a better story. Speaking of retreads, season 3 has the same themes as season 1, just taken further. What happens when one character is conveniently way more pregnant and gives birth? Looks like more conflict for the show to milk dry. Season 1 already tackled how the corporation will win over humanity. Did we need more of that message? It feels repetitive, and I get that it sounds silly to wish for a more positive ending, but that would contrast with how season 1 ended on such a bleak note. Everybody wanted a happy ending back in season 1, and with the negative conclusion, the themes presented were more impactful. Squid Game had no reason to continue beyond Ji-hun destroying the games, so when he doesn't, the point is lost on me. I already knew that the corporation was in control and how capitalism prevails against humanity, but we all went into these final seasons expecting what was promised: a revolution. Why show the audience the same message? Was it to waste our time? Was it to drive the point harder into our brains? Was it to prove that more seasons of this show could exist? Because that seems likely now. To end season 3 on the same note as season 1 feels cheap and, unfortunately, pretty lazy. I'm not in the business of rewriting, but a happier ending would prove why these seasons even needed to exist. Season 2 wasn't made because more story needed to be told. Season 2 was made because money is cool and Netflix likes money. I'm grateful season 2 explored different sides of Ji-hun, but season 3 does not capitalize on that. The large message revolving around Ji-hun is that the corporation will always win, and throughout the season, we watch Ji-hun succumb to failure, only for a certain character to give him a new purpose. It's contrived as hell. Why not write a more compelling season that utilizes Ji-hun in a new way? Like, I don't know, maybe the frontman pulls Ji-hun from the games, convinces the players that he's been killed, demoralizing our heroes, and Ji-hun not only learns about player 1 from the jump of the season, but he also gets a front row seat into the chaos he was previously a part of. That is a compelling direction to take this character, and it puts the focus of this season onto his character instead of some melodramatic narrative that repeats the same message we already received in the first season. Season 3 fails to deliver any meaningful messages because it wasn't designed to. There are no themes left to tell. The only purpose seasons 2 and 3 should have acquired was focusing on the characters and telling an engaging story that audiences can fall in love with. That would have worked. Man, I have been very negative so far. I still thoroughly enjoyed Squid Game 3 while watching it. I mean, I cried during various moments, especially during episode 4. Like, holy shit, that got me. It's just that in retrospective, the show has numerous issues that aren't easily noticeable when you're so worried about whether your favorite character is gonna bite the dust. It's like when you go to a restaurant when you're starving and order a meal that clearly isn't good, but you loved it because you were so hungry. Then afterwards, when you're stuck on the toilet, crapping your insides out, you realize that maybe the meal you loved earlier wasn't actually good. Yeah, anyway, let's talk about the games. Season 3 features 3 games, all of which were solid. Hide and Seek was an interesting addition to the roster of twisted games. At first, I thought it would be unfair to require certain players to kill each other in hand-to-hand combat, given that no previous game has ever required that. But then I thought about it and realized this game probably acted as punishment for Ji-hun's failed rebellion, which is why it would have been fascinating if Ji-hun was pulled from the games to witness the chaos unfold from the frontman's point of view. Knowing that, I love this game and think its execution was best compared to the other games. The game tests players to see how far they're willing to go for survival, and despite some poor character writing, the episode featuring this game was the best of the season. The next game was Jump Rope, which is a great improvement from Glass Bridge. That game in Season 1 was way too coincidental and unfair to be remotely interesting. If Ji-hun had picked jersey number 1, he would have died. Whatever. Jump Rope works better because there is no luck involved. It is purely player skill, and that works well. The episodes featuring the game kind of suck and drag horribly, so the tension created back during Glass Bridge is gone. Squid Game returns in the final game, except now it's way high up. The game is fine, not really any notes on the concept. I like how players get to make decisions without any interference or twists. It's just who should be killed. Again, it kind of defeats the purpose of the original use of Squid Game, but you know, this season sucked anyway, so who cares? Each game serves its purpose in the season, but I mean, do they compare to Red Light, Green Light, or Dalgona, or Marbles, or even recently Mingle? They just fall a little short, mostly due to the lack of quality writing backing up the interesting games. I mentioned earlier that this season drags, and yeah, it's noticeable. I understand that some people say the season felt rushed, but I'm gonna disagree. I was admittedly hooked, but let's be honest here, so much time is spent telling the audience information we already know. That's what I mean when I say the season drags. Considering very little happens compared to previous seasons, Squid Game 3's solution is to stall. Characters will chat about things for way too long, specifically in episode 5. I mean, they spend ages talking about who's gonna get the boot when we as an audience kinda already know what's about to happen.
Excuse me, what the actual fuck?
Character interactions end up feeling derivative of Season 2. Like, I'm okay with how Season 3 treats Player 333, but if he's not gonna change, why in the world is he still talking to Player 222? There is no development happening. The writers are just beating a dead horse at this point. It's funny that in both Season 1 and Season 2 of Squid Game, Episode 1 was phenomenal, but if you held me at gunpoint and asked me what happened in Episode 1 of Season 3 that moved the story forward, I would ask you to put me out of my misery. Yes, let's spend an entire episode dedicated to Ji-hun being depressed and players talking about who gets to hold a knife. 6 episodes, by the way. Only 6. And let's not get started on the detective. His ass spends the entire season on the water, which is fine in theory, but little to no development occurs for him. The character moments he faced in Season 1 have evaporated until the final episode of Season 3, where, as many people will point out, failed to live up to expectations. If you aren't going to develop him during the season, you have to do it during the climactic moment. Even Guard 11 gets significantly less time to flesh out her character compared to Season 2, and it's just sad. This is so clearly the end of Season 2 and not its own season, which makes the slow pacing even more obvious. At least Season 2 is building towards something. Season 3 is just the end of something that should have ended last year. Anyway, didn't I say that I was going to start being positive? Wow, there's just a ton to criticize, and I apologize. But this time, I'm sticking to the positives, because despite what I've said, Squid Game 3 does have some merit. The technicality, for one, is immaculate. The lighting in Season 3 is just perfect and sells every single emotional beat beautifully. Season 2 already had wonderful lighting, but Season 3 goes even further. Each game has its own unique color scheme, from the painting aesthetic of hide and seek, to the childlike wonder and jump rope, to the bleak horror of Sky Squid Game. Just chef's kiss on the lighting. The cinematography also holds up consistently with the previous seasons. Many close-ups, wide shots, and uncomfortable angles keep the audience engaged in this story. Talking about the technicality of a project is almost boring because it should be the norm when making a piece of media, but so many shows lack that creative flair. So yeah, I'm gonna point out that Squid Game looks better than 90% of shows coming out today. You know, minus the baby, because wow, that shit looks horrible. But I'm gonna be generous here because Squid Game getting a baby wrong is less egregious than Marvel getting an entire sandbox wrong. The bar is low at this point, but regardless, Squid Game is a visual treat. The performances are also top-notch. Lee Jung-jae is once again phenomenal as Ji-hun. Holy, just realized I've been pronouncing his name wrong. It's Gi-hun, not Ji-hun. I'm so sorry. Yim Si-won delivers a complex and likable performance as the anti-hero Myung-gi. Jo Yuri made me cry numerous times with her performance as Jun-hee. Lee Byung-hun is still haunting as the frontman. Park Gyu-young is fantastic as Nool. Park Sung-hoon is still insanely likable as Hyunju. Ro Jae-won is still remarkably hateable, yet easy to sympathize with as Namgu. Kang Ai-shim is wonderful as Gyeomja. Kang Ha-nool delivers a completely new side of Daeho. And man, YDG as Young-sik, what a performance. Whatever they are in, I gotta watch it because these performances are just that amazing. They completely sell the drama and horror of this show. If I were judging the show on the acting alone, Squid Game 3 gets 5 stars. Well, maybe 4.5, because what was going on with the VIPs? They sounded horrible! They are certainly the worst element of the series by far, and I understand the importance of these characters in driving home the major themes of the show, but like, maybe grab some better actors, maybe? Squid Game 3 was underwhelming. I wouldn't say disappointing, as I was thoroughly entertained, but the lack of progress towards expanding this universe was a shame. Seasons 2 and 3 are just Season 1 again. The same point is told again to drive these themes home. The show isn't interested in exploring new facets of this world beyond one great subplot that was underutilized. Nothing new was gained, it's just Squid Game extra electric boogaloo. More death, more violence, more pulling on the heartstrings. It's entertaining, but not substantive. So much more could have been accomplished with this premise. Gi-hun could have destroyed the games in South Korea, but learned that he only stopped a small portion of a larger issue. The director has come out stating that the original ending sees Gi-hun leave the games, reuniting with his daughter, and witnessing the reality that he had not accomplished what he thought he did. That would have been cool, but you know, a negative, repetitive ending works too, I suppose. I don't hate Squid Game 3. Far from it. But the conclusion to this trilogy is lacking the juice a great series needs. Instead of building upon the perfect foundation that was Season 1, the show copies the formula and repeats the same beats we are all familiar with. It's just lazy, and unfortunately it fails to live up to the quality of Season 1, and really the quality that should be expected of all shows. Simply put, Squid Game 3 was a fine enough conclusion to a story that already concluded 2 seasons earlier.